The world before the moon, a sky without light. They say the world has always had a moon. That when the sun sets and the stars blink into the velvet sky, the moon gently rises to guide us through the night. But I know differently. I've walked in the world when the sky held no silver eye, no gentle glow to watch over us. I remember the time before the moon. Back then, night came like a great swallowing beast at each evening. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, a thick darkness spread over the land so complete, so heavy you could feel it pressing against your chest. The stars were faint and scattered, like lost spirits struggling to find each other in the void. There was no moon to stitch them together with its silver thread. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was alive. It crept between trees, curled around rooftops, and slithered into homes through every crack. We feared the night. Our fires burned constantly, not just for warmth, but for protection. We told stories not for entertainment, but to keep our hearts from trembling. Children were not allowed outside after dusk. Even the bravest hunters returned before the final blink of sunlight. You see, in that age, night belonged to things that should not be named, creatures older than memory, spirits that fed on fear, shadows that whispered your name in voices not your own. As for me, I was still young then, but even I could sense that something was missing. Not just light, but a kind of balance. The night felt wrong, incomplete, like a song missing its final note. My grandmother used to sit by the fire and hum lullabies from long ago, her voice shaking as she sang, of the eye that watched the world. But when I asked her what that meant, she would only stare into the fire and mutter, lost, stolen, hidden. No one really believed in the moon anymore, at least, not in my village. It had become something of a forgotten myth. Just another tale like talking animals and trees that weep. But there were signs. Old carvings on stones near the river showed a glowing circle in the sky. Hunters told stories of seeing a pale shape floating above the hills on certain sacred nights, only to vanish when they blinked. One night, I couldn't sleep. The fire had gone out early, and my hut was blanketed in a blackness so thick I couldn't see my own hand. I lay there, eyes open, trying not to breathe too loudly. That's when I heard it, the sound of the wind whispering my name. Not a dream, not a trick of the ears, but a clear, unmistakable call. Luma. Yes, that was my name. I sat up slowly. My heart thudded in my chest like a drum of war. The wind came again, this time brushing against my cheek like a cold hand. Come. Why I obeyed, I still cannot explain. I didn't feel fear. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, as if I had been waiting for that call my whole life. I stepped out into the night, barefoot on the cool earth. The sky was thick with clouds, and not a single star shone through. The village was asleep. Even the dogs, who usually barked at anything unseen, lay silent. The wind guided me toward the forest. I knew every path, every bend in the trees, but that night, the woods felt different, as though they had changed shape. The trees whispered among themselves, their leaves rustling in a language older than any I knew. I walked deeper, led by something I couldn't see but could feel, like an invisible thread tugging at my chest. Eventually, I came to a clearing I'd never seen before. It was perfectly round, as though the earth itself had formed a sacred space. At the center stood a strange ancient tree. Its bark was silver, glowing faintly in the darkness. And there, resting in its gnarled roots, was a smooth, glowing stone. Not bright, just a soft shimmer enough to outline its round shape. I gasped. Thought it was the same shape I had seen in the river stones. The circle, the eye. Could it be? I stepped forward, reaching out my hand. The moment my fingers brushed the stone, a vision flooded my mind. I saw a time long ago, when the moon did hang proudly in the sky. I saw a jealous spirit one who hated the light stealing the moon. from the heavens and hiding it deep within the earth. I saw people weeping, animals running in panic, the forest grieving. And then I saw a figure, someone who would be chosen to bring the moon back. That figure was me. I fell back, breathless. The stone pulsed in my hand like a beating heart. I didn't know how I knew, but I understood. The stone was the moon's soul, its essence. It wanted to return. It was waiting for someone to carry it. But why? Me, the wind whispered again, because you are not afraid of the dark. And only one who walks through darkness willingly can bring back the light. I stood in silence for a long time. The stone was still in my hand, its glow brighter now. The world around me remained silent, but something inside me had changed. I could feel the beginning of a journey stirring in my blood. A journey that would take me far from the comfort of my home into places forgotten by time. The moon was not lost, it was waiting, and I would be the one to bring it back. The keeper of the light, a secret buried on earth high, didn't return to the village right away. That night, I stayed in the clearing with the glowing stone cupped in my hands, its faint light warming my palms even as the air around me grew colder. I couldn't sleep. I sat with my back against the silver bark tree, staring at the stone and wondering what it meant to carry the soul of the moon dot by the time the first hint of dawn tinged the horizon. I knew I couldn't keep this secret to myself. I needed answers, ancient ones. And I knew exactly where to begin. There is a place deep in the mountains, past the whispering plains and over the river of stones. My grandmother once spoke of it when she thought no one was listening, a forgotten temple carved into the side of a cliff, guarded by time itself. She called it Monga, the Drum of Light. According to her stories, it was built long ago by those who first understood the language of the stars. If the moon had truly been taken, perhaps they were the last ones to know where it went at, so I set out. The journey was not easy. I traveled mostly at night, led by the faint shimmer of the moonstone. It grew brighter the farther I went, almost as if it was guiding me, sensing the path, remembering where it had once belonged. On the second night, I encountered the first sign that I was being watched. I had stopped near a bend in the river to drink when I felt the air shift cold, sudden, and unnatural. The trees fell silent, not a single insect chirped. That's when I saw the eyes, not one pair, but many, glowing faintly in the underbrush, unmoving. Not animals. Something older. Then came the voice, not loud, not even spoken out loud. It vibrated in my chest like a distant drumbeat. You carry what was stolen. I gripped the moonstone tightly and stood tall, though my legs trembled. I carry what was lost, I answered. The eyes blinked once, then vanished. The warmth returned. The forest breathed again. From that moment, I understood this path would not be walked in peace. There were things, creatures, spirits, guardians of the dark who did not want the moon returned. And they knew I was coming. 3 nights later, I found the temple dot. It was exactly as my grandmother had described, hidden behind a waterfall that spilled down the face of the red cliffs. I crossed a narrow bridge of stone, slippery with mist, and stepped behind the curtain of water. There it was, the entrance to Yamanga. The carvings on the walls shimmered faintly, ancient symbols that pulsed in the presence of the moonstone. I moved deeper inside, past statues of forgotten guardians, their eyes closed in eternal sleep. The air grew thick, heavy with memory. It smelled of dust, stone, and something older like a storm that had never passed dot at the heart of the temple. Stood a single drum, tall and cracked with age. It was said to have once echoed the beat of the universe itself. As I approached, the moonstone in my hand pulsed, and the drum responded with a single, deep thum, even though I hadn't touched it. Suddenly, the chamber lit with a soft glow. On the walls, images began to move, not drawn or carved, but alive-like. Reflections from another time. I watched the story unfold, Long ago, before humans walked the earth, the moon hung proudly in the night sky, its light protecting the world from the creeping darkness that sought to devour it. But not all spirits welcomed the light. One in particular, known only as Obalu, grew jealous. He was a being born of shadow, a weaver of silence. The moon's glow burned his essence. So one night when the moon descended to touch the earth, something it did only once every 1,000 years, Obalu trapped it. He tore its soul from the sky and buried it deep within the earth, scattering its light so it could not be found. The people suffered. The world lost its balance. But a prophecy remained that one day, when the time was right, a soul unafraid of the dark would be chosen to return the moon to the sky dot as the final image faded. The drum spoke again, not in sound this time, but in voice. "You have been chosen," it said. "But you are not yet ready. Then what must I do?" I asked aloud, feeling small beneath the gaze of the forgotten gods. "There is a keeper," the drum answered. "A guardian who holds the final shard of the moon's light. Only when the pieces are one again can the moon rise." "Where is this keeper?" The chamber grew cold. The light dimmed. "In the Valley of Bones." I had heard of it, of course. Every child in the village had. A cursed place where no birds flew, where no trees grew. A place where sound itself seemed to vanish. It was said that those who entered never returned. But I understood now that was Obalu's resting place. The last prison of the moon's light, guarded by the keeper. I took one final look at the carvings on the walls. They were fading now, as though the temple had shared all it could and was. Returning to sleep dot as I stepped outside, the waterfall sparkled with early moonlight, faint, distant, but there. It was the first time I had seen the moonlight return to the sky, even just a little. The stone in my hand pulsed warmly dot it was. Working, but I also knew the hardest part of my journey was just beginning. The keeper was waiting, and so was Obalu. The brave one who dared. My journey begins. I left the temple with the weight of the moonstone in my satchel, and the echo of prophecy ringing in my ears. Only when the pieces are one again can the moon rise. The keeper had the final shard, and the keeper lived in the Valley of Bones. I'd heard stories of that place my entire life. Stories whispered around fires with eyes darting toward the shadows. They said it was where the earth forgot how to live. A place where even time was afraid to pass. But no story prepared me for what I saw as I reached the edge of the valley. The trees thinned out until nothing remained. No grass, no birds, no insects. Just cracked earth, scattered bones, and a wind that didn't whistle but moaned like it was mourning something ancient and forgotten. A long stretch of land opened up before me, gray and dust-covered, littered with remnants of beasts, whose names have long been lost. Even the sky seemed darker above this place, as if it avoided shining here. I tightened the strap of my satchel and stepped in. The first thing I felt was silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that wraps around your head and presses down, making your ears ring. I couldn't hear my footsteps. I couldn't even hear myself breathe. It was like the valley swallowed sound. Still, I walked at each step felt heavier than the last. My legs ached, my chest tightened. The air was strange, here thin, almost bitter. But I pressed on, guided by the faint, steady glow of the moonstone against my hip. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, as if it too knew we were getting closer dot. It was near dusk when I found the bones that still bled dot at first. I thought it was a mirage. A skeleton, giant and curled, like the remains of a serpent or a dragon. But as I stepped closer, I saw something impossible, drops of silvery liquid seeping from the bone's hollow center. The liquid shimmered like moonlight and water dot. The moonstone glowed fiercely now. And I understood. The keeper was near. I knelt beside the bone and touched the silver liquid. The moment my fingers grazed it, the ground beneath me trembled. Dust. rose into the air, spiraling like smoke. Then came the voice, not from around me, but inside my head, clear and thunderous. You have come for what is not yours. I looked up. From the shifting dust emerged a figure tall, cloaked in bone-white robes, with no visible face. Only a mask, carved from ivory, with two narrow eyes that glowed faintly from within. The keeper. I come not to steal, I said aloud, though I wasn't sure the thing needed words. I come to return the moon to the sky. The keeper tilted its head slowly, curiously. Many have come before, all failed. Then they weren't meant to succeed, I replied, but I am. Silence passed, longer than any breath. Why do you want to bring back the light? The keeper asked. The darkness does not lie, it only reveals. I had never thought of it that way. I looked around at the desolate valley, the broken bones, the air heavy with silence, because the world needs both, I said, light and dark. The balance was broken when the moon was taken. The world has forgotten how to hope. I've seen it. The keeper stepped forward. The ground didn't seem to react to its weight, as if it walked between layers of reality. From within its robe, it drew something, a shard, no larger than my palm. But it radiated a light so pure, so sharp, it made my eyes water. The final piece of the moon. I will not give it freely, the keeper said. You must prove yourself worthy. Of course, it was never going to be easy. Then test me, I said, placing the glowing moonstone on the ground between us. Its light merged slightly with the shard's glow. The keeper raised its hand, and suddenly the world around me vanished. I stood in pitch-black nothingness, then dash-light, not gentle moonlight, but blinding, painful sunlight, scorching and fierce. I raised my arms to shield myself. The heat was unbearable, the light cutting through every shadow. This is what the world becomes when it has only light, the keeper's voice echoed. Harsh, unforgiving, truth with no mystery. Then the scene changed. Darkness again, but colder, thicker, this time crushing. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. And this is what remains when darkness swallows all. Fear, isolation, madness. I gasped, struggling to breathe. My chest was tight, my limbs frozen. Balance is not the presence of both, the keeper said, appearing before me again. It is the understanding of both. In that moment, I understood what I had to do. I didn't fight the darkness. I didn't flinch from the light. Instead, I opened my arms to both. I embraced them, sun and shadow, pain and peace. I let them wash over me, not as enemies, but as pieces of the same truth. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the valley. The keeper stood still. The moonstone floated above the ground, and beside it, the shard joined it, merging with a silent flash. The two became one. The keeper bowed. You have passed. I approached the glowing sphere, no longer just a stone, but a perfect orb of pale silver light, pulsing with ancient power. The soul of the moon, whole once more, the sky had already begun to shift. Clouds parted. A path opened in the stars. It's time, I whispered. I raised the orb high. At first, nothing happened. Then the earth trembled, not in fear, but in joy. The wind rose around me, whirling with the voices of ancestors, of spirits long departed, of animals howling in celebration. And the moon rose. Not from the east, not from the west, but from the center of the sky. It lifted slowly, rising higher and higher, bathing the world in its soft silver glow. The shadows retreated. The stars grew bold. The world breathed again. I stood in silence, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from something deeper. I had been part of something older than time. I had walked through darkness, earned the light, and brought balance back to the sky. The keeper was gone. The valley of bones was no longer silent. It hummed, quietly, peacefully, like the Final note of a long-forgotten song. And above me, for the first time in generations, the moon watched over us once more. The great trial, earning the moon's place in the sky, the moon hovered now above the horizon, no longer buried, no longer broken, but it did not stay. It lingered there, caught between earth and sky, glowing softly as if unsure whether it belonged. Something was still unfinished. I could feel it in my chest, a tightening, a pull, like an unfinished breath. The moon was restored, yes, but not yet free. The balance I had fought to return still hung in the air like a question. And deep within the earth, something ancient stirred. Something that had been watching me since the moment I touched the moonstone. I had felt its gaze in the temple, in the valley, even in my dreams. It was the darkness beneath all darkness. The one who had stolen the moon in the first place. Obalu. I heard his name in the wind, now not whispered, but spoken. The world trembled as he awoke. I turned, and the land around me changed. One blink, and the Valley of Bones was gone. The sky turned pitch black, and the stars were smothered like dying embers. I stood on a wide plain of obsidian rock, the air filled with the scent of ash and cold metal. In the distance, something moved vast, slow, and hungry. A figure emerged from the shadows, towering and impossible, its body made of smoke and night, its eyes like hollow pits. He had no face, just a void where the face should have been. Yet I could feel him looking at me. "You would undo my gift?" he said, his voice echoing like thunder inside my skull. The world was better in silence. I swallowed hard. No, the world was afraid. People hid. Life stopped growing. Fear is the truest form of worship, Obalu hissed. It reminds them of their place. You would replace fear with foolish hope. I raised the moon, holding it high above my head. Hope is our place. His laughter was like the sound of mountains crumbling. So be it, he said. Let us test your hope. The ground cracked beneath my feet, and fire erupted in a ring around me. The moon above trembled, its light flickering. Obalu raised one shadowed hand, and from the darkness sprang 3 beasts, guardians of shadow. Shaped from smoke and bone, the first beast was shaped like a lion, but it had no mouth, only a gaping silence where its roar should be. It lunged. I dodged, barely. Its silence followed, cutting off all sound around me. I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. I remembered the lesson of the keeper. Do not fight the dark, understand it. So instead of running, I turned and faced the beast. I let the silence pass through me. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, letting the fear fall away. I imagined the moonlight reaching it, not to destroy, but to recognize it. To name it. The moment I did, the beast froze. The silence broke. It crumbled into dust. The second beast slithered out of the fire, a serpent made of shadow, eyes glowing red. It struck without warning, wrapping around my legs, whispering lies into my mind. You are not worthy, it hissed. You are alone. This will break you. My legs gave out. I fell to my knees. The doubts it whispered were truths I had tried to ignore. What if I failed? What if the moon fell again? What if all this was for nothing? But then I remembered my grandmother's songs, my people huddled in the dark, the children who had never seen the moonlight. I remembered the keeper's voice and the river that once shimmered with silver. I remembered why I had come. I am not alone, I whispered. I reached into my satchel and lifted the moon again. The light flared not as a weapon, but as a beacon. The serpent shrieked and vanished into smoke. Only one trial remained. Obalu stepped forward himself. He no longer wore shadows. Now he was shaped like me, my face, my hands, my voice. He held a mirror to me, a perfect twin. He smiled. Your final enemy is yourself. I stood frozen. He moved like me, spoke like me. He was me, I carry your fears, he said, stepping closer. Your doubts, your guilt. You cannot destroy me because I am you. And that's when I understood. He was right. I couldn't destroy the darkness. I couldn't destroy my fear, my flaws, or my failures, but I didn't have to. I lowered thee. Moon slowly. I looked Obalu in the eye my eye and said, You are a part of me, but you don't rule me. He raised his hand to strike, but I didn't lift mine. I simply stepped into him. The two of us merged, light and shadow, courage and fear, self and self. The plane of obsidian shattered around me. I stood once more in the waking world, in the valley, under the vast sky. And this time, the moon rose higher. It shimmered fully now, whole and glowing, casting its silver gaze across the land. The wind changed. Trees began to sway again. A howl echoed in the far mountains. Not of fear, but of celebration. Balance had been restored. I fell to my knees, exhausted, but I smiled, because I knew the great trial was not about fighting monsters or defeating darkness. It was about facing myself. And choosing light anyway. The night sky wakes, a gift to the people. Asterisk, not the cold, biting wind that prowled through the trees on moonless nights, but a gentle breeze, warm and soft, brushing my skin like the hand of a mother waking her child. I opened my eyes slowly and looked up. There it was, moon. Whole, high, glorious. It hung in the sky like a crown of silver flame, surrounded by a tapestry of stars that no longer flickered in fear, but gleamed proudly beside their long-lost queen. The darkness, once oppressive and suffocating, now felt gentle, cradled by the moon's watchful light. I lay in the grass for what felt like hours, letting the quiet settle over me. Not the silence of death I had felt in the valley of bones, but a silence full of breath, movement, life. For the first time in memory, the night had peace. When I finally stood, the moonstone, the orb I had carried through mountains, through trial and fear and myth, was gone. Not destroyed, but no longer needed. Its purpose fulfilled. Its light now burned in the sky for all to see. My journey, I realized, was complete, but my story was not. The path home was no longer lined with shadows. The forest I had once feared felt familiar, welcoming. Creatures stirred in the brush without alarm. Owls called to one another, frogs sang from hidden pools, and fireflies danced in patterns that made me smile. The world had changed. Or perhaps I had. When I reached the edge of the village, dawn was beginning to blush along the horizon. The villagers stood outside their huts, eyes wide, faces tilted to the sky. No one spoke. Not at first. They stared at the moon, as though seeing an old friend returned from the dead. Children pointed and laughed. Elders wept openly, murmuring forgotten prayers. The dogs howled not in fear this time, but as if greeting the sky. My grandmother, her hands trembling, reached out to me as I stepped from the tree line. You did it, she whispered. I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. She cupped my face with her weathered hands. You brought her back. I didn't do it alone, I finally said. The moon remembered us. She just needed someone to show her the way home. That night, the village threw a feast unlike any I had ever seen. Not because it was grand or filled with riches, no. It was grand because it was filled with light. Fires blazed not out of fear, but joy. Drums echoed through the night. People danced barefoot in the dust, their arms raised toward the moon as if trying to touch it. For the first time, our stories had light to walk beside them, and when the time came for silence, they asked me to speak, to tell what I had seen, what I had done. So I stood before the fire and spoke not as a hero, but as a witness. I told them of the world without a moon, of the temple behind the waterfall, of the keeper in the valley of bones, of Obalu, the shadow of myself I had to face. And most importantly, I told them what I had learned, that the moon was not just light in the sky. It was a mirror. It reflected who we were and who we could become. It showed us our fears, but also our courage. It revealed darkness, but gently, never cruelly. And in doing so, it reminded us that even in the night, we are never truly alone. After the story, there was no applause, only quiet, and then a deep collective sigh. A breath that seemed to leave every chest at once, as though the village had finally exhaled a fear it had held for generations. The elders came forward and placed the hand-carved staff in my hands. It was not a weapon, not a tool. It was a symbol painted in silver, adorned with feathers, stones, and woven thread. They called me Makuma Wamazi, bearer of the moon, but I did not feel like a bearer. I felt like a bridge, because the moon was never mine to carry. She belonged to all of us. I had only reminded her where she came from. As the years passed, stories of that night spread beyond the borders of our village. Travelers came to see the moonlight that fell gently over our land. Children from distant valleys listened wide-eyed as I told the tale, each time adding something I hadn't before, some detail. The moon whispered to me in sleep, but time, as always, moved on. I grew older, my legs grew slower, my voice changed. The world turned still. Every night I sit outside my hut beneath the same silver light. The moon watches me just as she did that night long ago. I like to think she remembers. And sometimes on special nights, I see someone standing alone at the edge of the trees, someone younger, curious, looking up at the sky with that same longing I once felt. That's when I know. Another journey is beginning, because the moon is not a treasure to be hidden, not a prize to be stolen. She is a story endless, luminous, always returning to the one who dares to walk through the darkness and ask. Why is the sky missing something? And when that question is asked with a brave heart, the moon will always find her way home again.